Hello everyone, John Coleman here for our 7th edition of the Tea and Mortgage podcast. So I'm looking forward to actually introducing you to a business colleague of mine that I'm hoping is going to share some excellent information.
Hey everyone, this is Norm Schreiber, co-host of the Tea and Mortgage podcast. So thanks so much for checking in, listening, and subscribing. And like John alluded to, we have superstar solicitor Mark O'Donnell of O'Donnell Murray on the podcast today.
Hi folks, thanks for that very impressive introduction there, Norm and John. Thank you very much for that. I'm not sure about superstar, but look, yeah, we certainly hope we provide a really good service for people. But yeah,
absolutely. Well, you're a superstar compared to us, so that's official.
Indeed,
Absolutely.
indeed. In terms of our practice, I'm the property partner in O'Donnell Murray Solicitors, and I deal with all the property items that come through the practice. And for the podcast here, really, I suppose we just go through a basic presentation for a normal property acquisition aimed at first-time buyers, probably.
Yeah, before we get into that, I'd just like to sort of give some background to you, Mark, on how you and I have started working together. For my sins, I've been doing this as for 20 years, and I hope you don't mind saying the solicitors haven't always been my favourite profession in this whole process.
We're regarded as a necessary evil, John. That's it.
Very much so. But in truth, you are God in this process. People can do without me, they can do without my service and my advice, but they can't do without someone like yourself. And previously, I had been recommending a different solicitor, and I was beginning to get complaints that they weren't coming back and they weren't responding to phone calls, emails, and this was happening across the board. But all the solicitors of all the clients were having it. So I stopped making recommendations of any solicitors because I didn't want my own reputation being tied in with them. But then I came across a client of mine who was using your particular services, and I was very, very surprised, but very beautifully surprised, shall we say, whereby you were actively ringing the bank on behalf of your clients. You were actively taking phone calls from me, and we're happy to do so, with the end result, getting a much better service to the clients. Now, that was 3.5 years ago. I've been giving out your name and number ever since. I've never once qualified it as a recommendation, because, again, I don't want my own reputation, but will be continuing to give your name and number out there to all my clients, and they will be in touch with you, I'm sure.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I know from the clients that come through that we constantly do get people that are referred. They say, John Coleman gave me your number, and he has nothing but nice things to say about you. So look, very, very pleased that continues. Excellent
stuff. Well, I'm going to hand it back to Norm, who will lead this to the point of educating all our mortgage clients as to, well, this particular part of the process, which is obviously very, very important, obviously the legal side of things, and making sure that all the I's and T's are dotted. So Norm, take it away.
Absolutely. Thanks, guys. That's wonderful. You guys have such a great work history, and things go smoothly. And of course, your mutual clients benefit. So Mark, before we jump into your great presentation that you have for us, maybe you could explain in super simple terms what a solicitor is and what you do. Pretend like you're talking to a dumb American, maybe, who's we know of one, I think, very closely on this call, but maybe explain as if an American or someone who's not used to the term solicitor, what your role is.
Sure, of course, Norm. Well, look, the solicitor's role in the transaction is effectively to act on the purchaser's behalf, and we check the contract for sale, the documentation in relation to the property in terms of the ownership, just to make sure that it's correctly owned and registered. We also help the purchaser with dealing with their bank in terms of arranging the mortgage documentation. And ultimately, as I said earlier, we are a necessary part of the process in that the bank requires a certificate from the solicitor to confirm that all the documents are in order. And that's our key role in the process, is we will sign off a certificate of title, and that confirms to the bank that everything is in order with all your documents. And also from your perspective of the purchaser, it gives you the comfort that you know a legal professional has checked all your documents and has confirmed to you that everything is in order for you to proceed, sign the contract, and make that purchase of your first home.
Wow, so you wear a lot of hats in the process. It sounds like you do the job of 3 or 4 other entities.
We do as a little bit of a hybrid, in that we are obviously acting on the purchaser's behalf mainly, but we also do provide certificate to the bank in relation to the documentation, because obviously the bank providing the mortgage require their security to be registered, and we perform that role in conjunction with the purchase. Side by side, we perform that role for the bank in terms of registering their security on the property. And then ultimately, and I know a lot of people ask, this is the process, like, where do the documents or the deeds, or when can I get them? And the answer to that is actually they go back to the bank at the end of the process, and the bank will hold on to your deeds until that mortgage is paid off. So, you know, if you've got your 20-year term, they're your documents ultimately. And at the end of the process, you will get them back, but they just stay with the documents, the deed security team in whichever bank you're using until that mortgage is redeemed. And that's part of our process as well, to ensure that everything goes back to the bank at the end of the process.
Yeah, that's interesting. And you know, you guys were joking around calling it a necessary evil, but it's the kind of thing you don't think about, or you think it's formality or just, you know, a bunch of paperwork or another step in the process until something goes wrong, and then you guys are absolutely invaluable. And have you seen like title issues or something?
Yeah, just on Friday, unfortunately, I got a call from a guy that I have recently acted for in the acquisition of a property. But he came to me and said he was remortgaging an existing property that he previously used another solicitor for. And when we took up the documents from the bank, and it was actually his valuer and his mortgage person that came across the issue, when they went to do the valuation, it turns out that quite a large proportion of his property at the rear of his garden and so on isn't actually registered in his name, and going back to the 1970s has been missed in a number of transactions. So unfortunately now we're in a situation where that previous owner is deceased, and it's going to be quite difficult now to resolve the issue. But every now and again that does happen. Look, the majority of times everything is in order, or if it isn't in order, we can fix it during the process of the purchase, and there aren't huge delays. But occasionally, unfortunately, it can be problematic in terms of fixing title. But what I would say to people is, generally speaking, in 99% of the cases, it can be resolved and it can be fixed and tidied up. It may just take a little bit of time, and that time may even be post completion of the purchase. So we can bring things to a point whereby we're happy that we can get it fixed, and then it won't delay the purchase and that keys handover any longer. And then your solicitor can finish out the process even after you've done your acquisition.
Oh, that's great. Yeah. And it's better to know than to not know, like you said, so you guys could try to fix it.
Yeah. Because it'll come up if you ever go to, like we like to say, the day you buy is the day you sell. And we you know, you just need to know that once you've bought it, that if you ever need to sell the property, you have all the documentation you need and everything's in order, and it can be done then without any problem.
Great. And why don't you briefly, I know there's a lot of different solicitors people could choose from there in Ireland. Why don't you tell us briefly about your firm and maybe what you guys do a little bit different or better than most?
Well, we hope so. Well, I suppose a key for us, or key for our firm, is that we have separate. So I deal with property. I know a lot of colleagues and people in smaller firms like ourselves might deal with a number of different types of things, so property and litigation and family law, and it can mean, unfortunately, at times solicitors are out of the office at court and so on. So for me personally, I only really deal with property matters, which means I like to be in the office all the time and available. And I hope that's where John sees that we are contactable, we are available, we do get back to people. And it allows us then to keep the process hopefully moving that little bit more smoothly and a little bit more efficiently, and that there aren't gaps and delays in the process. That's probably the most frustrating thing for people is, things taking a week or two to get progressed. But that's what we like to hope, is that when we have people specifically dealing with your file, it won't be passed to other solicitors, it won't be passed to legal executives. I will be dealing with the matter, and I will be contactable as part of the process. And hopefully that gives you a little bit of a better idea and a better knowledge of what's happening during the course of the transaction.
No, I'll just jump in there. The fact that a lot of solicitors are kind of got multi hats on them is never the best situation for, like, I before I actually started giving Mark's name out there, I was telling people that they should be looking for a solicitor who only dealt in conveyance, so they weren't going to be out in court, and if they're out of court, they're uncontactable, and it just makes it more difficult. So the fact that Mark actually, it's his core specialty within the whole legal field is a huge bonus in this process.
That's amazing. And go ahead,
I'm
Mark.
lucky that I have so Paula Cullinan here, one of the other partners. Paula will deal with all litigation matters and family matters. So you know, it gives me comfort that all that stuff is being dealt with, and that Paula can deal with all the court work, and it leaves me free then to remain in the office and deal with the property transactions.
Yeah, and everything that I've learned about, you know, the mortgage and property buying process in Ireland is that it can be frustrating from a buyer's standpoint with the timelines, with the waiting, with communication, with the different, you know, sometimes a problem comes up, sometimes the bank service is slow. And so I think you making that extra effort and providing great communication and being accessible is not a small thing at all. I think that's very important to buyers and mortgage clients.
I probably don't want to advertise this, but I know Mark has occasionally met clients at weekends and late in the evenings. I know that's not something you want.
Norm, you can edit that bit out, Norm.
Yeah.
So everyone listening, the 5 million people listening to this podcast, if you need a solicitor to pick you up from the bar and drive you home sober at 2 a.m. on a Saturday, call Mark.
Yeah, please don't call me from a Garda station. It's the wrong type of solicitor.
We are not editing that out. That's great. But no, especially for first-time buyers, I think their stress level is high enough, and their frustration, and just someone pick up the phone and get back to them and say, "Hey, it's okay. This is normal. This is where we're at," I think is invaluable.
Yeah, I think we sometimes forget that because we do it so often, and you know what the process is. But obviously, with first-time buyers, it's important just to let them know, look, that there will be a little bit of a delay here, or it's going to take a week, or even to let them know rather than just leaving it go for that week. Even though the end result is the same, I think once they're in touch and they know what's happening, it obviously gives them a comfort that okay, there's going to be a little bit of a delay, but they're aware of it. Yeah,
wonderful. Thank you for enlightening me about that, and then putting it in terms that even a ignorant American can understand. I appreciate that. And no joke, John does have a significant amount of Americans or people from other countries, of course, that move to Ireland to buy homes. So not everyone's familiar with solicitor and exactly what you do.
That's the thing. It's you know, even if you're a first-time buyer, you may have heard some terms or some parts of the process, but what I like to say to people is, look, you know, the earlier in the process that you can appoint your solicitor or even get speaking to your solicitor, just have like a 10-minute call at the start. Get a broad outline of the process, and you'll know the stages, and you'll know then when to contact each other, and it'll just give you that rough guide and guidance as to when you should be doing certain parts of the process.
Wonderful. And then you were nice enough to send us over a PDF that I think you have about 6 great slides here with information that I will post on the YouTube portion of this podcast if anyone's looking for that. So why don't, if you would do the honors, why don't you go down the list?
Sure. Well, I just touched on the first one, actually, just to say, a lot of people think, oh, when I've gone sale agreed that I need my solicitor. Happy to have a call much earlier in the process. I'd say when you get your approval in principle and you just start to look at properties, I think at that point you should just contact a solicitor, get a quote for their services, and ask them any questions about the process that you need to know at the very beginning, because it'll just give you a bit of knowledge that, you know, even when you're only at the early stages of making offers and dealing with the estate agent, it might give you a few hints and questions as to what to ask about or things to see or look at the property. So I would definitely say that as early in the process with your approval in principle, just check out solicitors, get some quotes, talk to one or two, and then actually have them on board as early as possible in the process. I think it gives an estate agent as well a little comfort that if they ask you about things and you have details and answers ready for them, in the sense of, you know, your solicitor. Likewise, you know, just have a surveyor lined out that you're ready to do the survey when you go sale agreed, and it just gives that comfort to the estate agent that you're organized, you're well prepared, you're dealing with the process, and that if they do decide to go with you, it gives them that comfort that, look, you'll be able to progress the process as quick as possible.
Okay, great to know.
It's important as well.
That's a really interesting point, Mark, because one of the key things that estate agents do want to know is, well, first thing they'll always ask them, have you got your approval in principle? But
exactly,
the point you make is if they can demonstrate this layer of having their solicitor, even having a surveyor in place, it demonstrates to the estate agent, well, these are serious people who have got themselves in good order and are ready to move. They're not time wasters, basically.
Yeah, absolutely. And as well, I know we get some feedback from people. So, you know, the bidding process itself can be a little bit difficult for people when they're not used to it, and they do get asked for approval and principles. And I know on occasion people are a little bit reluctant to maybe reveal the extent of their approval if they are bidding on a property, just in the sense that they don't necessarily want the agent to know exactly how much is at their disposal. So we certainly, even in that early part of the process, would be happy to provide, we would give letters to the estate agent confirming that the purchaser is approved sufficiently to complete the deal at the purchase price without actually revealing how much exactly they're approved for. And it gives purchasers just that little bit of comfort that they're not disclosing their hand in the negotiations in terms of making offers.
Very clever. Yeah, that's I'm sure greatly appreciated by your clients or buyers when they're in the, you know, when in the bidding war environment, or in an environment when the seller could get a little greedy there.
Indeed. What I would say as well is you should get any contact or quote from your solicitor in writing, and they should include the fee, the stamp duty, the land registry, the kind of outlays that are involved as part of the process, just so you know at the very beginning how much the overall piece is, because sometimes people will get a quote for the solicitor's fee and then they can be a little bit surprised later on that it didn't include the VAT and the searches and the land registry and the stamp duty. So you should get a list of maybe 6 or 7 items that are all part of the process and have an overall figure from the solicitor that is the total amount that's going to be payable. Again, and it shouldn't really be payable until the end of the process, until the work is done.
Okay, great.
Okay. Well, I kind of, as I say to people at the moment, the hard part is unfortunately finding a property. I know it's really difficult out there at the minute in terms of supply, and it's very competitive. People go and see a property and it's you know, maybe on the market at 350, and by the time they make an offer it's already at 390, so it can be quite disheartening. But hopefully you'll get to the point of having an offer accepted and going sale agreed, is what they say. And that's really the key point then for the start of the solicitor's work. So the estate agent will ask you for the payment of your booking deposit. So it's effectively a payment usually between 5,000 and 10,000 payable to the estate agent, and that means that the property will be held for you, and the owner's solicitor will then issue the contract documentation to your solicitor. So that's when you're nominating or giving your solicitor's details to the estate agent once you've gone sale agreed. That deposit is fully refundable if for any reason you decide not to go ahead with the purchase. So when you pay your booking deposit, you'll have a few weeks to organize that survey, make sure your surveyor goes to the property and checks in terms of structure that everything is okay. If it throws up an issue, it's an opportunity to perhaps renegotiate with the price, or have some discussion if there's works to be done that were unexpected. Or if it's something very serious, obviously, look, you may just decide not to go ahead. In that case, that deposit that you paid is fully refundable in that instance. Likewise, it'll be the point of the process where all the initial documentation is sent out to your solicitor from the owner's solicitor. And again, if there's anything in the documentation that just can't be resolved or can't be fixed and you decide not to go ahead, the deposit is fully refundable. And that's really the first contact in terms of perhaps a meeting with the solicitor at that point, just to let you know that all the documents are in, the contracts are being reviewed, the documents that come with the contract in terms of confirming ownership, the planning permission, the documentation in relation to property taxes, for apartments, all the information about the management company, which is very important. All those items then will arrive in that first sort of 2-3 weeks post the payment of the deposit. And hopefully, when the surveyor says everything's fine and your solicitor says everything is fine, that's when you'll meet the solicitor and go through all that documentation together. It should take maybe 45 minutes, an hour, just going through all the contracts, through all your questions, anything that you needed to double check. And at that point, you'll be signing the contract, paying the balance of the 10% deposit. So that's just the sort of industry standard norm for paying and exchanging contract is 10%. And a key point there as well is that's when the completion date will be agreed, in terms of, as the question I'm most asked is, we go through everything for an hour, and ultimately I say, have you got any other questions? And the only question anyone ever asks is, when are we getting the keys?
Yeah.
So that's look, it's the most important question for the purchasers, and that's really decided during the process of checking the documents, and again, agreeing a date with the vendor solicitor to do that final payment and do the key handover.
Obviously, Mark, as well, at that point when you're signing contracts, in the loan offer from the bank should be issued, basically.
Absolutely. So I suppose two prongs at the minute that we see on that front. So for existing properties, we'll have the loan offer issued, and again, in the same meeting, same documentation, go through with your solicitor conditions in the loan offer, anything that you wanted to check, and you'll be signing that loan offer as well. For new builds, again, sometimes the process is such that the property may not be ready for 6 months or 9 months. So invariably there, we would say that we would still also, even though you may have your loan offer or you're expected it, put a clause into the contract that says, look, because it may be 6, 9, 12 months until completion, it would also cover that you would have to get any extended loan offers or any reissued loan offers. The loan offer would effectively have to be there right up to the drawdown date for you. So it allows for that build out of the property in terms of, it can be a much longer period. So typically in a contract for a new build, the completion period would be 12 months, 18 months, maybe even 24 months. And just depending on what stage the construction is at, it can be 3, 6, 9 months until the properties are actually finished. And in those instances, you may then have to have a second loan offer issued. John, am I right in saying that it's usually around 6 months for most of the banks in terms of the lifespan?
It's a 6-month time frame, and it is a real pain, but the point you make is you put a clause in your contract at the point to protect them in case a client's circumstance changed in that period of time. If someone lost a job or something along those lines, well, the bank wouldn't reissue a loan offer. So it's very, very important that they are protected. I know you do that as a matter of course.
Yeah, no, not all builders or builders solicitors and take instructions. Not everybody agrees to it. We certainly have 1 or 2 developments at the moment where effectively they just won't agree to that clause going in. So in those circumstances, we do have to go through with people that sort of extra risk involved, in the sense of, if for some unforeseen reason, particularly if the build is 9 or 12 months for completion, it's quite a long time and things can happen. People can be unexpectedly made redundant, and even if you get a new job, you're on probation, so the bank may not view that as full-time employment for maybe a 6-month probationary period. So there are little things that we do need to go through with people, but again, that's why it's good to have the solicitor in early in the process. You can talk about things like moving job or things that you might be thinking of that you just need to get some advice on, because there may be unforeseen circumstances with the bank and with your loan offer. And I always refer people back to John when they say they've been offered a new job and they'd like to take it, because I know, John, it does have an impact then in terms of the bank's view of you as a permanent employee.
Yeah, no, well, as a matter of sort of rule of thumb, it would be don't change jobs while you're waiting to have it. Doesn't mean it can't be done, but it can add certainly layers of stress to the process and a few extra grey hairs along the way. But it can be done, but it's not advisable. Would be the message I'd give.
The message, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So I suppose when everything is ready to go and ready to be signed, the contract, the loan offer documents, and that completion date agreed, particularly for existing properties, it's usually then another 2 or 3 weeks from the exchange of the contract to the completion date, and that time frame allows for the process with the bank in terms of the drawdown process. So sending in the signed loan offer, having the building's insurance completed, the mortgage protection or life policy completed, and then your solicitor also sending the certificates to the bank to confirm everything's in order with the property and the planning and so on as well. And I know, John, that can take maybe at the moment a little bit longer than normal given the number of applications that are out there with the banks, but generally speaking, I suppose 2 or 3 weeks from exchange of contract would be a reasonable period then for completion.
Yeah, that's all being in good order. Can sometimes take 3 to 4 weeks, but it would depend that they have everything in order. But you would be looking at it. I would tell people 3 weeks so that they're managing their expectations. Obviously, one of the key questions they get asked, and you may get asked this as well, Mark, would be, well, if they're renting a property, when can I basically tell my landlord I'm leaving? Well, in effect, I hate saying this, but sometimes you don't want to commit to a date because, well, they could be homeless if there happen to be any delays in it. So it is always advisable.
Then they'll have to stay with Mark for a few days or weeks. Huh?
Indeed.
It would be advisable, I always say, to keep a couple of weeks leeway in case there are last minute hiccups, you know, and the hiccup could be some last minute red tape with the bank, could be some last minute document that didn't come into you, Mark, or something on those lines. So that is a really important point, that people think that it can I can move out of my rented house and move into a new house all on the same day. It doesn't always work like that, and it's fraught with danger, in my opinion.
Yeah, it can be very difficult, particularly because I suppose 2 things. The completion date isn't always the completion date, which some people are very surprised by. So look, you know, if we put the 1st of September in the contract as the completion date, it doesn't guarantee that completion will be on that day, particularly if, you know, the people that are buying the property and the people that are selling the property, if they're buying another property. So if you're in a little bit of a chain, you're just caught there with other parts of the transaction that are outside of your control. And particularly the completion date may not be the actual set in stone completion date. So if we suggested the 1st of September in the contract as the completion date, it doesn't guarantee that the completion will be that day, and that can be for a number of reasons. So for instance, like John said, if some documents are a little bit delayed with the bank, or there's a hold up on our side of the transaction with funds issuing, it might be a couple of days after that. So you don't want to put yourself under unnecessary pressure. But also probably more likely, if the people that are selling the property to you are buying another property, and the people that are selling to them are buying another property, you can get into a little bit of a chain whereby if something happens further up the chain at the last minute, again, if someone isn't quite ready, it can have that knock-on effect and things can be pushed back. It does happen quite regularly that completion would be pushed back by, you know, even just 3 or 4 days. But if you've given your notice and you've put yourself under pressure, it can be very difficult. So unfortunately, what I'd say to people is, to be honest, almost to the point of having your keys, I would be reluctant to give a notice. Things can go wrong at the last minute and can take a week or 2 to be rectified. So if you're erring on the side of caution, no one likes to pay a month's rent and perhaps then almost straight away pay their first mortgage repayment. But you know, if particularly if you have small kids and family and things like that, it's just not advisable to give notice almost until you have the keys absolutely in your hand.
Yeah, just to be safe. That sounds very wise.
Absolutely.
One other point to add to that, Mark, would probably be, a lot of people from my end, if the funds issue from the bank on a certain date, that the perception out there is, well, that's the day I'm going to close. Well, in reality, as you just described, that isn't the day. It can be, depending on when everyone else is ready, it can take at least, normally it's about 3 days in norm, but if there's anything on any further delays on that chain, as you described it, that can take longer, you know.
Yeah,
absolutely. And to be fair, we like to order the funds and request them maybe a day or 2 before we need them, just so that we have them in our account, because there will be then a transfer from one solicitor to another, and they may have different banks, so it can sometimes take another day for funds to transfer. So again, if we were completing on the 1st of September, I'd probably like to have the funds on the 28th or 29th of August just in the account and ready to go. Doing things on the day and moving parts can be quite difficult to do everything on the one day.
Yeah, sounds like the whole process is a lot of hurry up and wait, right?
Yeah, it's just there are so many sort of Yeah, unfortunately, there's the vendor solicitor, the purchaser solicitor, the bank. You know, there's just lots of pieces that are a little bit disconnected.
Yeah, well, and of course it's all worth it with the ultimate goal when it comes to fruition of these buyers getting their keys. And you probably see a lot of happy faces. Both of you probably get to give a lot of happy phone calls, huh?
I certainly like Friday afternoon phone calls or Thursday afternoon phone calls can be probably the best time of the week in terms of letting people know that everything is wrapped up. I suppose like on the day, the final day is obviously the big day for the purchaser. So usually by early afternoon, all the paperwork and everything has been done. The funds have been exchanged. The searches, which again is another element that people probably don't know a lot about. So we do searches in terms of there's a high court register, judgments, bankruptcies, the land register, lots of places where we just need to check, make sure there are no monies owed by the vendor, no mortgages that haven't been discharged, no judgments out there against the vendor that they owe money somewhere else, all to make sure that you as the purchaser get a clean property and the only thing on it will be your mortgage from your lender. And the reason people think it's odd that happens on the last day, but the reason for it happening on the last day is because the registers are updated on a daily basis. You literally have to do them on the morning of the completion just to make sure nothing last minute has arrived onto the register. So usually by early afternoon, I'm making a lot of happy phone calls to people to let them know that their sale has completed and that they generally then would collect the keys from the estate agent. Again, it's a common question is, you know, where do we actually collect the keys from? So the process is generally the owner's solicitor confirms that the funds have been received and everything's okay. We let them know that all the documents and the searches are okay. And then they'll let the agent know that the sale has completed and the purchaser will then call to the estate agent's office and collect the keys. Obviously, a new build is slightly different. They'll go to the site and the site office, and the site guys will bring them to the property and show them around. And again, just on a practical basis, show them how the heating system works and all those good things that when you buy the house, you need a little bit of help with in terms of actually figuring out how everything works.
Wow, great, yeah. Let me ask you this too, and we super appreciate your time and educating everyone here on the podcast today. What is one of the things that you see people get wrong about the solicitor, about your role in the transaction? You know, maybe a common mistake or a misconception.
I suppose there's a little bit of crossover with the questions that are related to the property, but maybe more for the surveyor. And there is an overlap there as well in terms of if there are issues with structure or compliance, that would be for us. But then there's also just a general issue sometimes with sort of items that need to be done or repaired or maintained or things like that. And there's maybe some discussion about that, which can generally be just with the agent direct with the vendor. But overall, I think that the best bit is just keep asking your solicitor questions. They'll let you know whether it's for them or whether they point you in the direction of, you know, that's for the mortgage broker, that's for the insurance guy, it's for the surveyor. But, you know, if you need to know, you should just contact them. They'll be able to guide you as to where in the process you need to go. But I'd say probably the most important thing is just having that early stuff done with your broker. So what I'd say to people is when they do get in touch and they've said, look, John has put us in touch, I'd actually say, look, get it back in touch with John and say, you know, start the process with your mortgage protection, start the process with your home insurance. It might seem early, but it just, if anything pops up and it causes a delay, you'll have started the process rather than waiting until even contracts are signed and exchanged before starting the process. It can just have everything ready, sitting, waiting, ready to go, and then John lets them know when to switch it on.
Awesome. That's great. Really good. I learned a lot, really good advice, really good information. Thank you so much, Mark. And if people want to get in touch with you, if they have questions, if they want your services, do you have some contact information they could easily get a hold of you?
They're welcome. We can certainly anything coming in by email on the slides, or my own email is just modonnell@odmlaw.ie, and the office number 015079626. If you want to have a little discussion in terms of just the general process, feel free. Just say that you're one of John's customers, and we're happy to go through anything with you.
Yeah, if they didn't get that, they can always contact me and I'll send them your way anyway as well, Mark.
Sure, brilliant.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Mark. We really appreciate you jumping on here in the Tea and Mortgage podcast, and many new clients, hopefully, and many new people you get to help.
Many new happy key holders, indeed.
Yeah.
Yeah. And look, if there's anything in particular, like a particular area that people have questions on, or they want to focus in a little bit more detail, look, happy to run through things for people.
Wonderful, wonderful. And John, anything else you want to add?
No, just to thank Mark for his time, and hopefully his service will continue at the level it's been at. That's ultimately why I'm giving his name out there, because he is taking my phone calls. He is ringing the bank. So no pressure, Mark.
No bother, John. Well, as I always say to people, once the stuff gets to the bank, John's the best man I know for getting the money back out of the bank again. So that's it's always helpful on my side that I know someone can make a call and make things move pretty quick in the bank. It's the only man I know that can get stuff done in a day or two.
Well,
So
you're
John,
you're putting the pressure right back at me. So okay.
There you go.
So John's the best man for getting money back out of the bank without
absolutely
legally with a pistol and a ski mask, huh?
Absolutely. I've seen people who work in the bank can't get money as quick as John can, so it's it's all good.
Okay, well, listen, thanks everyone for listening. I hope you got great value from the really insightful information that Mark shared with us today. Obviously, if you need to get in touch with Mark, he gave the details, but you can always get in touch with me and I'll put you to Mark's way as well. So thanks all again for listening, and hoping you'll tune in the next time.